Good morning. How's everyone doing? I hope well. I hope you got a lot of sleep last night. I didn't, but I sure hope you did. All right, so all of you SQLite, how do you guys say it? I always called it SQLite, SQLite, uh, the local database, uh, the embedded database. I'm talking about you, Russell. I'm talking about you. Good morning, Start Engine. It's good to see you this morning. All right, so for any of you, while we're just waiting for people to trickle in, for any of you that are new, we just go over some cloud news. We talk about the public clouds, then a little bit about Kubernetes, what's going on there. Then we talk a few blog articles, and then we wrap up with a few open source projects. Although these last couple weeks could have been better with the open source projects. Let's be real. I need to work on that. It's hard to continually curate a new list of open source projects. You say SQLite? Or the pro way? I guess you probably say GIF too instead of a GIF. All right, before we start a war here, let's start off with an interesting. Now, it's interesting to me. It has somewhat to do with security. It has some. So I'm putting it in security, whether we like it or not. Cloudflare did something, and I'll let you be the judge of what they did. I'm sure that you guys have all. I don't actually know what happened with Kiwi Farms. Maybe that's what it's called. I think it's a forum. Kiwi Farms. Anyways, Kiwi Farms, I guess, has promoted harassment. I don't know. Again, not really involved in that. Haven't even watched anything on it. Cloudflare was asked to deplatform them. And Cloudflare's initial response is one that I actually appreciate. And I'm going to paraphrase it for you all. But basically, all you're asking us to do is take off their bulletproof vest, which would mean that you want to do something illegal to them. Basically, is the concept is, if we deplatform them, we're taking off their bulletproof vests, so you're asking for us to take away their protection so you can murder them, is basically the statement, and that there's better legal means to handle things like this. Doing something illegal isn't the best way to handle this. I'm presuming that they wanted to DDoS them, which, yeah, again, it's not the best way to handle this. So, come this weekend, Cloudflare decided to block Kiwi Farms. Now, it's weird because they only had their security and protection through Cloudflare, not their actual hosting, so it should be fairly easy for them to switch to whatever. But, so they reiterated that, there were other legal terms. And then they reiterated that this is not them setting a new precedence. Although I think it is a new precedence myself. But I think that they were also put in a bad spot. They had a lot of pressure both ways. I don't know whether it's that they said that it was because of escalating threats. Again, I don't really know what this is, and they didn't outline what they said. They were never their hosting provider. They say that it's not because of a pressure campaign. I don't know. I really don't. But they did deplatform them, form them. So that's what happened. All right, let's move on to other security. We had this good little piece. Chrome extension with 1.4 million installs is stealing browser data. That's like every single week. I don't usually bring it up. This one I found interesting, that the Clean Google Translate app is actually a Windows crypto mining malware. So there's a new Trojan that is selling itself as Google Translate, and I guess it works as expected for the first couple of weeks, and then it starts mining crypto for you. Or not for you, for somebody else, but on your machines. This one I found particularly interesting in the NIST database. Was a TikTok security application where basically you could compromise a person's account with a single link. So generally, it's not a single link can take over your account. Generally, that doesn't happen. Actually, it happened once on YouTube a little while back. But generally, you can't give somebody control of your account by clicking a single link. That's generally decided as bad practice. And I guess that Microsoft actually found this one for TikTok Android. And put it in as a CV, and it's been fixed, so don't have to worry about it. But yeah, Microsoft didn't have a very good week though, so let's talk about that. This was their outage. Actually, we're on to cloud. That was it for security. Other than Russell using his hacking skills for himself, I don't know that was really news. But I put Microsoft's outage in the security because availability is part of security. But it also ties then right into Azure Cloud, so we're kind of in the hybrid right now. So yeah, they actually had a pretty massive outage. You can see Azure's right up here, and I'll put this in the link to the description. This is their write-up, and basically it was because of DNS failures. It's always DNS. Let me tell you, you join clustered, you do anything, you check DNS first, because it's usually broken. Anyways, it's mostly was a DNS, and it was kind of weird because you can see that all these Azure container. Let's see if I can zoom up and that make it readable. Whoa, okay. So yeah, you can see that a lot of the failures were in like Azure Container Apps and Azure Kubernetes Service. There was all these failures, but their general infrastructure was still available. So there was a lot of people that weren't impacted by this outage, although the outage lasted for a little while. Looking further into it and reading up on what they said went wrong, basically it was a bad update to the Ubuntu image, the 1804, the long-term support 18 version. There was a bad update that basically took out its DNS. So there was no more domain resolution, and it would just fail to connect. So if you were on Ubuntu 1804, this was God's way of telling you that you need to update. I think 2204 is out, so you're like 2 long-term releases behind. Let's not be on 1804 anymore. Like, let's just do that. Uh-oh. Alarm. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Sorry. I should have been clear. Russell was doing his own. You know when you lose your keys or you lose your passwords because you didn't remember to save them? I believe that was what Russell found himself in the distinct pleasure of being. So, yes. We're all ethical people here. Hopefully. I don't really know all of you that well. All right. So let's. Yeah. So, anyways, that was a pretty bad outage for them. They go on to talk about a lot of their outages and what happened. They also go into how they responded. With their fixes, and some of the fixes were actually on the host themselves for like VMs, and how they fixed it on Kubernetes, so their AKS, and then how they're going to make incidences like this less impactful. So I think that this is a decent write-up. Cloudflare obviously does better write-ups on their incidences, but it's a very standard write-up. And I think this is important for trust and security. I think everybody understands that incidences are going to happen. But actually, this is the most important part. Now, I wish that they had actually written more on this part right here. You know, what are you going to do to make sure this problem doesn't happen again? Or problems like this case of problem. And I think that that's a really important one. And I wish that they had put a little more emphasis on this. Again, they don't do as big of write-ups, and I'm sure that they have teams that are working on these subjects. But yeah, Cloudflare really could be, all the clouds should look at Cloudflare for their communication. Generally available, new Azure virtual machines with Ampere Ultra ARM-based processors. I don't know if this is a P or a F or a, maybe it's silent, Ampere Ultra. Anyways, not really sure. It's English. You can never really be sure. Anyways, I announced these a little while back. They're now generally available, so it's their ARM-based processors. So it's really awesome if you can run on ARM, which if you're running Go or Rust or any real language, they all cross-compile for ARM. And really, the only times I've seen Rust or Go, I can't even say Go. I think I've never seen Go have the problem. But if you do some really weird native threading, so C++ and Rust, you can do this, then you can get yourself in trouble with ARM. But if you're outside of that, if you're on your standard microservices or things like that, which are a lot of the things that are run in the cloud, I don't see you having a problem switching to the ARM-based things. So definitely go check this out because you could save yourself a lot of money. All right, public preview, encrypt stored. You know, I say that you can save yourself a lot of money. And I think you can. I think all the stats point that way. I've never actually tested it myself. That's something I've been wanting to do. All right, encrypt storage account with cross-tenant customer managed keys. So this is pretty cool. So this is going to allow your customer to manage the keys, and it will allow you to encrypt your storage account with cross-tenant customer managed keys. That's actually pretty cool. All right. So this was interesting. I put it in with the cloud news. The Xbox gaming platform, the servers that power it are in AKS, or they were in Service Fabric, and they're moving to AKS. And in that, they're moving to Marianer, which is a Linux distribution. Now, before you jump in like, oh, Microsoft is adopting Linux here, it's Microsoft's Linux. They're the ones that adopted Marianer. They actually went on to like describe why they picked Marianer because of its roadmap and things like that. Well, they control the roadmap. So like that makes sense. It's your distribution of Linux. Anyways, whatever. It's interesting because I almost kind of half assumed that the Xbox app is really crappy. Like, let's be honest, it's really crappy. So I thought the backends were definitely on Windows Server. I thought Microsoft's microservices would be on Windows Server. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong here. Maybe this is incorrect. I mean, they've put a lot of work to making containers on Windows servers work. So you can actually have Windows containers, which I don't even know what that means because containers, as we all know, because you've watched my introduction to containers, is a Linux kernel thing. So they kind of like mimicked the Linux kernel stuff. I'm, again, not really sure how it works, but it's powered by Linux. It'd be a cool topic for a video: ARM versus x86 for standard microservices. I actually like it. Let's put it on the list. I'm going to put it on the list. Yeah, that's actually a really good one. All right, so that's it for Microsoft. No more Microsoft news. Let's jump into GCP. As usual, GCP had a bunch of things. And by a bunch, I mean they're introducing pay-as-you-go pricing for... I'm not... Anyways, their API management. I should have looked this up before. Yeah. Anyways, so they have this API management, and before today, it hasn't followed standard cloud practices and been pay as you go. You've had to actually subscribe with like a contract and whatnot. And if you're trying to go API first, these API management platforms can be really helpful to provide that API to your users. So now you can do pay as you go. That's about it. Not a whole lot more to say here. There's still the subscription plan, which is a little confusing because in my mind, the AWS way of doing this is as you consume more, it gets cheaper. But here, the pay-as-you-go is a set price total, and if you want that cheaper and you get to that scale, you have to switch over to the subscription contract-based thing instead of the AWS. Now I know with AWS, because you're going to jump on me and say, well, with AWS, you can sign up for 3 years and get discounts on the things. And you're right, there is that for sure. But this is just a little bit different. But anyways, I'm glad that they added pay as you go. I think it's important to allow adoption at low levels because it was really expensive at the lowest level initially. So anyways, that was the biggest news there. And by biggest, that was the only thing they published that I saw. Let me know if I missed something. AWS, on the other hand, what are you guys saying? All right. Apigee? Is that how you pronounce that? Apigee? Oh, I did not know that. Well, thank you for letting me know. Well, very nice. Let's move on to AWS. Yeah, anyways. Announcing workflow. Okay, so this I think is really big. Especially if you're using Kubernetes on EKS. So Carpenter, if you don't remember, I did announce this, so you should always be up to date on the latest if you follow this, is a Kubernetes cluster autoscaler for your EKS workload needs. Now, Carpenter does work out of EKS. They made it an open source project, which is cool. I don't know how it works outside of EKS. It was designed for EKS initially, so I don't know. Your mileage may vary. But the really cool thing that they did for Carpenter now, what they released in Carpenter 0.15, is that it will actually scale down your cluster as well. So basically what Carpenter looks to do, which I think is something that is super needed, is if it can consolidate nodes. So as you're scaling up, you're spreading out your nodes and you're doing stuff, and it's all great. But eventually the scale subsides and you don't have all of the different things, and so some of your services shut down because they're just not needed anymore. But you have what I like to call it is fragmented memory. You have all of these holes. And so what Carpenter does is it's going to start filling in those holes and start migrating stuff out to pack these servers so that it can offload all the work from these other servers and shut them down. I think this is huge. This is the biggest reason that everybody should use Carpenter from now on in EKS, if it actually works. I haven't tested that it works. You know, sometimes what's marketed and what is in actuality, I can't tell you. But if it works, I think this is huge. This is absolutely huge. And kudos to them. I'm not going to read what you guys are saying because now I just think that you're trying to get me to say stuff with all the retracted messages and, yep, not reading it live. That's for sure. Anyways, I think this is huge. Super awesome. Again, I don't know what their support for other clouds is at this point, but hopefully it works on EKS. Amazon Connect launches API to search for queues by name, description, and tag. So that's nice that they API-ified it. API-ified it. I don't know if that's a new word. But they made it so that you could use an API to query for those things. Really nice. And then AWS Fargate is now available in the Middle East. This is out there because I just showed you that I looked through all of their what's news. This was it. Really, this is the big news here. The workload consolidation for Carpenter. For all of you Kubernetes fans, I think this is a big deal. Everything else, AWS is holding close to their pocket. Close in their pocket. I don't know what the saying is. They're keeping it close because reInvent is just around the corner. I expect a lot of stuff at reInvent. All right, let's talk about Kubernetes. 1.25 has just been released, and I know I need to make that video. I know. I have a lot of videos, a lot of stress. I've been busy. Trust me, it's not for lack of working. I've actually been struggling a little bit with my channel. And is it a devlog or is it purely education? I don't know. I'm working on that. But 1.25 has been released. It has some cool features. I will release that video shortly. So yeah, be looking out for that as we'll cover those new features. Then I found this. It was the ultimate list of open source cloud natives. It was released on the Kubernetes website under their news, so whether you think it's news or not, I was disappointed in this curated list because, like, it was scheduling and orchestration. Well, use Kubernetes. Observability and analytics. Use Prometheus. It was kind of like the ones you probably already know. It didn't give you any insight into any ones that were like persistent storage, use Rook. Service proxy, Envoy. Service mesh tools, Linkerd. I feel like it didn't actually give any insight into anything that I would have particularly liked it. I would have liked a list like that to be more comprehensive. I would have liked it to weigh some pros and cons of different options like Linkerd or Istio or Kuma. What are the differences? Why would I pick one over the other? And when you're saying the ultimate list of open source cloud native tools, I expect it to have all of these things so that you can make an informed decision. When the ultimate list is maybe a page and a half long of a landscape that has thousands of projects, I don't know. And then it was in news. I don't even know how that was news. I don't even know why I showed it to you guys. I showed it to you because I'm a little ranty. Close to their chest. That's what it was. Thank you, Rubber Cable. All right, I found this blog article we're on to blog articles. And actually, I only have one engineering blog of the week. And I literally only have one blog of the week. and it was a good read. It was fantastic. I really only got to read one, been super busy. Visual Studio Code is designed to fracture. Now, this person worked at Gitpod and has some really cool insight of the Visual Studio Code. Now, I think he was probably a little overly negative, but it's a good article. It has a lot of stuff in it, and it's a good article. Now, one of the things that basically at the core concept of it is that there are two distributions of the open source projects. There is Microsoft's own, which is not open source because it has some of Microsoft's telemetry in it. The other thing that it has in it is that it has Microsoft's own tooling, which not all of that tooling, like the C++ and I think the Python and the C#, aren't fully open source. And so when you make these open source distributions of them, they aren't actually the exact same, because the Microsoft C++ compiler cannot be included in it. And so that's what is designed to fracture, and that's what all this big chart goes into on how these different things are incorporated in it. Now, I think part of it is that Microsoft does really great developer tools. Their compilers and those things are just really good, and it's hard for the open source community to compete with them. That's one of the lines to have here. Now, they're going that it's directly meant to fracture the community, which I don't know that it is. I think it's more of a consequence. So I don't necessarily agree with everything that the person says here. But it was a really good deep dive into it and like the communities of these open source projects. So I really liked it. Anyways, you should go read it for yourself. And then you should jump on the Discord and argue about whether you like it, disagree, or don't disagree with it. I'd love to hear your thoughts. We have just recently been by the DVD actually labeled us as the Kate's extremist Discord. So I don't even know what I did to deserve that title. Hopefully I don't get deplatformed because I'm an extremist now. Yeah, so you should join the Discord and talk about it. You should go read it, though. I'll leave a link in the description as soon as this is done. All right, then let's get into some open source. New open source project for you all by your favorite company. This company is all about the meta. So Russell said, I wonder why Microsoft even gave away a text editor. Is the telemetry data they collect that valuable? So I don't even know that Microsoft collects the telemetry to sell. Microsoft does these sprints. And so I know people that work at Microsoft, so I have a little bit of insight into this. They do sprints, and they do incremental development on those sprints. But what a lot of people don't realize is that a lot of that development is driven by the telemetry that's in VS Code, that's in the big brother of VS Code, the Visual Studio. All of those things, I would say like half of their sprints are driven from that telemetry. Like Microsoft uses that telemetry to drive its development. I think this is like the purest form of telemetry. And I'm not saying that they don't sell it. I'm not saying that they don't do other things with it, but they do that specifically. They leverage the crap out of that telemetry to understand what features are important, to understand what features are being used. and they use telemetry from VS Code for more than just VS Code. Which languages are you using? This goes across all their products, from Visual Studio to Visual Studio Code to their as we were talking about, their compilers and things like that. So where do they put the focus on those projects, and how are those projects being used themselves? So that is one of the ways that they use that telemetry, and they leverage it a lot. Yes. Yes, that's what I'm trying to imply, Russell, is that they leverage Visual Studio Code's telemetry to influence their paid tools. 100%. Absolutely. I'm not saying that Visual Studio Code isn't also relationship building. I'm not saying that it's just out there for that. I think that there's some of that. I think that there's also I do think that when you say relationship, I would say community, which is, yeah, same thing. But I think that there's a good community building tool there, because Visual Studio is A, expensive, and B, isn't nearly lightweight enough for half of what I do. I don't want to pull up Visual Studio. Also, I run on Linux, so like it doesn't even matter. It's a great test bed for new things. Think about Copilot. Where did Copilot land first? Did it run in Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code first? Visual Studio Code. It's a great test bed for things like that. It's designed to be extendable, and whatnot. So, did you end that with eggplant? Embrace, extend, extinguish, eggplant. If that's not a shirt, that needs to be a shirt. I need to start making more shirts. I don't know if that's... I don't know if you're tricking me into something there. I probably shouldn't have said that online. I'd never trust you guys anymore. I would agree with Russell. I believe the embrace, extend, extinguish was a very much Ballmer thing. If you look at... Microsoft is the largest contributor to open source at this point. They have a lot of their own open source. They are, if you actually watch my new video on the Kubernetes release, I actually break down the top 5 largest contributors to the Kubernetes project, which Microsoft is second or third. I think they're second after Google, or they're third. They're third because they're after Red Hat. It's Google, Red Hat, Microsoft. Microsoft does a lot, and I think it's all if it profits. Embrace it if it profits us, and I think that AKS, their Azure Kubernetes service, profits off of it. So guess what? They contribute to it, which I think is actually a fine and healthy thing. Like, I know that people will, I'm for it for the community. Microsoft has to make money, and I think that's a fine way to embrace open source. They contribute a lot to it, and that's fine. That's okay. They try to profit off of what they do and pay their engineers, so that's fine. All right. Let's get a little more meta. Introducing Velrox. I think it's Velrox. Feel like that's an epic name. Velrox. Needs to be pronounced that way every single time. And I'm probably mispronouncing it, but that's okay, because I did it with an epic voice. Velrox. An open source unified execution engine. If that confuses you as to what that means, it's bound to. Velrox is this layer right here. So when you're doing a query, when you query with SQL, there's a bunch of layers that happen. And here's the layers there's Presto SQL, Presto IR, Presto Optimizer. Then there's the Presto Worker, or the Spark engine. That's this piece of this stack. So you can use this with Apache Spark or Presto, and it replaces the Presto worker or the Presto engine. It was designed as a drop-in replacement for the Presto worker. Basically, the Presto worker is slow, written in crappy Java. They rewrote it in C++ as a really efficient thing, and it works really fast. How fast? Oh, you're right. There is no R in Vel. I can't say it without the R. Velrox. Velox. Velox. Still sounds epic. Just no R. It would have been better with an R. Would have been better with an R. I think it's. They should have asked me. Velox. Probably is an actual word, and I just don't know it. It's because it's from another country that doesn't just speak English. All right. So by their standards, it's an order of magnitude faster. So that's pretty good. They're probably hyping it a little bit, but yeah, it's cool. And it's an open source project, so you can go check out the code yourself if you like writing C++. I have written way too much C++ myself. I like C++. I know that's not a popular opinion. I think that if you took C++ 20, disabled all C++ 99 features, you'd have a fantastic language. Anyways. So replace all engines with the XKCD standards meme. Yeah. So yes. Anyways, it's an execution engine for a stack like that. It takes a fully optimized query plan and performs the described computation. That's what it does. It's the computation layer of that query plan. Again, I think it's cool. It doesn't provide the SQL parser, the data frame layer, or the query optimizer. But if you don't know this stack, I think the best thing that you can take from this, if you learn nothing from this today, is understanding this stack. It's actually quite a bit of stuff that happens for something that you take for granted. And I think that's actually probably the coolest part of all of this. So yeah, take that for what you will. All right. I also found Rough, which was super cool. It's a super fast Python linter. Awesome for your GitHub Actions if you want to lint your Python really quickly. I'm not going to say, but maybe that's what I found it for. And you know your language is awesome when Rust has to come in and fix the deficiencies of your own language, which is what happened here. I just lost a subscriber. Sorry for you, Python lover. Now, before we get to, there's actually good uses of Python. Like, obviously, I'm trying to lint Python. I think that Python has a few really good use cases. It's just not a one tool fits all and solves all problem. That's Rust. If you want a tool that solves all the problems, that's Rust. Otherwise, you need to use the tool for its intended purpose. Anyways, it's actually really, really fast, and I like it. So use it in your GitHub Actions. It returns really quickly. Another open source project that I found was this Upscale. They spell scale just about like I do, which was nice. It's a open source upscaler. So there's been a lot of like proprietary ones out there that do some cool things from like NVIDIA and whatnot. And this is like the first Linux first one. I haven't found one that wasn't just like a Windows NVIDIA like project. It does require Vulkan compatible GPU, but it's pretty cool. I haven't tried it out. Well, I mean, I tried it out on one image, but I haven't tried it out on like a ton of images to see how it worked. It worked on that one image fairly well. So I found this as I was looking around. I have some older images that I was like, hey, I might try this on because they're like 1 megapixel and they're garbage. If I can get 2 megapixels out of it, I'll be happy. So anyways, it worked pretty well. So yeah, go ahead and check that out. Yeah, I need to stop sometimes. Sometimes I just need to stop. All right. That was it for the news. I hope you guys found it useful. Thank you all for joining me. I super appreciate it. You guys are fantastic. If you like this and you made it all the way here, go ahead and hit that like button. And if you're not subscribed, definitely go ahead and do that. And I'll bring you guys the news next week. I need to stop reading your guys' comments because they're distracting at best, and I think that you guys are always leading me into a trap at worst. That's actually maybe at best. At best, you guys are leading me into a trap. So I need to be careful. Getting me to say stuff. We also have made some shirts. All right, so one of the things that I got out of this from all your guys' stuff, cool topic for a video, ARM versus x86 for standard microservices. That is definitely going to become a video. Now what I need to do is do some research on exactly what that means. Does that mean the efficiency? Because that actually is an interesting topic all in itself. Does it mean how hard is it to take your application and from an x86 and compile it or cross-compile it into an ARM? And how hard is it? And are there any pitfalls? That's seems like two completely separate topics. Maybe they're both needing to be covered. This is where I'm saying like I have a little bit of a midlife crisis in my YouTube channel. And one of the reasons my latest video isn't out because I rewrote the script like I told you guys that I had to because I wrote it, realized I did something wrong, and I basically had to throw that video away. And then I realized that the new video came out very much like a devlog instead of like an educational video. And so now I'm rewriting it again to be that educational video that most people expect from my content. But at the same time, there's educational content in my devlog as well. And this is where maybe the live streams solve the problem, where you guys can tag along if you really want that deep educational stuff, and I can make some videos from the live streams themselves. I don't know, and I'm thinking on it, and I'm working on it. And while I do that, I've been working on the null cloud, as you guys are null farming. Wait. All right, so small potato in, big potato out. Yes, that's upscale. Small potato in, big potato out. 100% DevOps. I guess you need to work out what standard is in terms of load and code. Yeah. Okay, so talk on the Discord. I'd love to hear guys' thoughts on how to do that well. Because like I said, I like the idea of the video. The execution of that video is one that I'm worried about. Or videos. Like it could be like a whole series of different aspects of the code. I think standard simple microservices aren't too bad. One of the biggest deals that you'll find with microservices, let's say you want to use X container image, and it's in a Helm chart. This I find all the time. They didn't compile a container with, not that it can't compile for it, they just haven't. And then you have to compile or build that container yourself, and then you have to edit the Helm chart to look at your container, and it's just a mess and a disaster. That's like the biggest pain point I've seen so far. But yeah. So join that and help me, because I'm trying to figure out how to make these videos for you guys. Like what videos should I make? I've done a lot of standard like I have my Kubernetes and my containers classes that I'm making, but those aren't really good YouTube content. YouTube doesn't like the I made a boring class to make you smarter. So yeah, I don't know. I'm working on it. Slowly, I guess. Slowly, because I also have work to do, so I have to work on that. Anyways, I hope you all have a fantastic week. See you next week.